At 9:07 one morning, two messages marked simulation reached my phone, and they could not both be true. Beside the phone lay the family call tree my son had printed, with my name missing from the system I had built. Why had Darren erased me? The first named the west side of our fictional exercise area unavailable. The second said the east. No one was in danger. Harbor Light was invented, and every message began and ended with simulation. But three adults in my family were waiting for different updates. If they assumed the others had received the same one, the exercise would record a false agreement. I forwarded both messages exactly as they had arrived. Under them I wrote, "These simulated updates conflict. Please confirm directly with the exercise desk and with one another. Do not wait for me or Darren to interpret them." Then my son called. "Mom, why did you send that to everybody?" "Because everybody was named in one message or the other." "You were supposed to send it to me." I looked again at the paper he had left on my kitchen counter the night before. His name sat in a blue box at the center. Lines ran from him to my sister Ruth, my niece Celeste, my nephew Owen, and 6 other adult relatives. There was no line to me. There was not even a small box suggesting I existed. "According to your chart," I said, "I'm not supposed to send anything." He was silent for half a breath. Then he said, "That was to simplify things." At 9:09, Celeste called me directly. She was 38, ran the receiving desk at a furniture warehouse, and did not need either Darren or me to make a decision for her. "Aunt Nora, Darren says the East message replaced the West one." "Did the exercise desk say that?" "No." "Then you know as much as I do. Confirm with the desk and call Owen. He received the other message." "You're not going to tell me which one to follow?" "Not when I have no basis to choose." She gave a short laugh, more relieved than amused. "That sounds like you." At 9:11, Owen called before Celeste could reach him. "Aunt Nora, why aren't you on this tree?" "Ask the man who printed it." "Darren said you retired from family coordination." "I retired from the Bellwether Hotel." "Well, he's telling the Civic Readiness Circle this is his system. They're giving him that community thread commendation tonight." That was the first moment I understood my missing name was not a clerical mistake. He needed the chart to tell a story before the commendation did. Owen wanted to keep talking, but another simulated notice appeared on his phone. I told him to read it himself before repeating it to me. That may sound like a small distinction. In our family, it was not. For years, relatives had called with sentences that began, "Darren says Ruth said," or "Nora, can you ask Celeste whether Owen meant—" A simple dinner time could pass through 4 people and return as an accusation. I had become skilled at cleaning those sentences until nobody remembered there had been a mess. My sister Ruth was 59 and managed the billing office at an appliance store. She could question an invoice down to the last service fee. Yet inside the family, she often accepted whatever account reached her first. Celeste supervised 12 people at her warehouse and made decisions all day, but Darren described her as easily flustered. Owen ran his own 2-person flooring business, though Darren still introduced him as the cousin who needed reminders. They were not helpless. They had simply grown accustomed to a family arrangement that treated competence as something we carried outside and surrendered at the door. The call tree was supposed to change that. Seeing my name gone hurt. Seeing all of their names beneath Darren's hurt in another way. It turned adults into extensions of one man and turned my work into the pencil he had used to draw the lines. I was 66 then, and I had spent 31 years working nights at a hotel where most problems arrived between the moment one manager went home and the moment another came in. I had never thought of myself as an expert in anything dramatic. I knew how to write down what had happened, what had not happened, who already knew and who still needed an answer. I knew that I told somebody was not the same as the right person understood. Those habits had followed me home. The family version began 8 months before Harbor Light, during a winter power interruption that lasted less than an hour. Nothing terrible happened. Ruth phoned me, I phoned Celeste, Celeste phoned Owen, and Owen learned that Darren had already called him with different information. By the time the lights returned, 4 adults had spent more energy tracing who had said what than dealing with their dark rooms. The next Sunday, I opened a video call. "We keep behaving as if one person has to know everything," I told them. "That person will eventually be asleep, busy, mistaken, or irritated." Darren smiled. "You mean you. Especially me." I showed them a plain page with pairs instead of branches. Ruth and Celeste confirmed with each other. Celeste and Owen did the same. Darren and I were linked, but neither of us sat in the center. If one person could not answer, the others still had a path that did not depend on guessing. I gave everybody the page. I did not copyright it, lock it, or call it Nora's system. It was a family habit made visible. But I did put one sentence at the top. Each adult speaks for what they received and confirms what they understood. Darren praised it that afternoon. "This is good, Mom. Clean." It will only stay clean if people use the side links. Too many links confuse people. Only if you think every line is in order. They're relationships. He rolled his eyes, but gently, the way grown children sometimes do when they want a parent's labor without the parent's explanation. 3 months later, he joined the Civic Readiness Circle, a fictional volunteer group that organized Harbor Light. He started asking questions about my old hotel handovers. How short could an update be? What made people answer? How did I decide whom to call first? I answered because he was my son, because I was proud he cared, and because I believed he was trying to make an exercise easier for our relatives. When he asked me to review his draft, I noticed that he had moved himself into the center. "That creates a bottleneck," I told him. "It creates accountability." "For you?" "For the exercise." He changed the subject. 2 weeks before Harbor Light, he came to my apartment with takeout coffee and a careful expression. "I think you should rest during the exercise." "I am resting. I sleep at night now." "You know what I mean. Everybody still looks to you. If you step back, they'll learn the new structure." I believed there was some truth in that. Families can turn one reliable person into a public utility. Since my retirement, I had begun to notice how often people called me, not because I was the correct person, but because I would answer. "I can step back," I said. "That doesn't mean I'm unreachable. Of course not." Then he took a folded draft from his jacket and asked me to shorten 3 of his exercise messages. I did it. That was the part I had to admit to myself later. Darren did not steal every hour in darkness. I had given him advice in daylight. What he stole was the account of where the judgment came from, and he had used my willingness to help as proof that I had agreed to disappear. At 9:18 on the morning of Harbor Light, Ruth received a 3rd simulated update. Hers did not replace either of the first 2. It changed the time attached to one fictional activity. She called Darren, as his chart instructed. He sent a group message, "Use the latest update." Celeste replied, "Which one is latest for Owen?" Darren answered, "The one I just sent." Owen wrote, "I didn't get one from you." I watched the messages appear on my phone. I could have called Darren and quietly repaired the gap. For years, that had been my role. I caught what another person missed, made the necessary calls, and allowed the clean result to stand as if no repair had been needed. Instead, I called Owen. "What do you have?" He read his simulated message to me. "Call Celeste and compare. Ruth has a different time. All 3 of you should confirm your own information with the exercise desk." "Darren says we should use his latest." "Then ask him what he believes you received." Owen did. Darren gave the wrong answer. Not wildly wrong, not foolishly wrong. He simply described Celeste's message as if it had reached Owen. That was precisely the kind of ordinary error a side link was meant to catch. At 9:22, Celeste called Ruth. At 9:23, Ruth called Owen. Each made a different, reasonable choice based on the simulated information actually in front of them. No one panicked. No one faced real danger. They simply stopped pretending one summary could replace three experiences. Ruth called me at 9:24. Darren says you're freelancing. What does that mean? He says you're adding steps that aren't on the official page. Did he say the exercise desk had changed the page? No. Then decide what you trust. She exhaled. I hate when you say that. Why? Because I want you to tell me he's wrong. I understood. A verdict from me would let her stay outside the disagreement. She could follow the reliable older sister and blame me later if the choice felt uncomfortable. I can tell you what I received, I said. I can tell you what Celeste told me she received. You have to decide whom you call next. Ruth was quiet long enough for me to hear a clock in her kitchen. I'm calling Owen, she said. That choice never appeared on Darren's chart. It became important precisely because it belonged to her. At 9:25, Darren called me again. You're confusing the tree. The messages were already different. You should have told me privately. I told every affected adult what I knew. You made me look unprepared. There it was. Not concern about the exercise. Not concern about Celeste, Owen, or Ruth. Concern about the picture of him. Darren, I will pass along every simulated update I receive. I will not tell anyone I'm acting under your instructions when I'm not. I need you as my alternate. Your chart says you don't have an alternate. Mom. Put my name back and tell people the system came from the family version. We can discuss credit later. Right now, I need consistency. Consistency is not saying the same thing after the facts have changed. He lowered his voice. Just answer as my backup, and don't keep talking about missing links. I felt the request land in the oldest part of our relationship. When Darren was a boy, he would bring me a broken school project at 10 at night and wake to find it repaired. When he was a young man, he would forget a birthday and ask me which flowers to send. I had confused rescue with love often enough that he had learned to expect the confusion. I'll share information, I said. I won't share your name. He removed me from the exercise group chat. For 1 minute, my kitchen became very quiet. Then Celeste called. He removed you, didn't he? Yes. Add me to a call with Owen. You can add him yourself, she paused. Right. That one word mattered more than any defense she could have made for me. At 9:29, Celeste started a three-way call with Owen. Ruth joined 2 minutes later. I did not lead it. Celeste asked each person what message they had received. Owen asked whether any message explicitly canceled another. Ruth admitted she had assumed latest meant replacement, though her page did not say so. They corrected one another without choosing a family commander. At 9:34, a fictional exercise facilitator named Marianne Pike sent a note to every participant. Simulation only. Please preserve your own exercise notes for the participant debrief. Record what you received, whom you contacted, and what choice you made. That note did not rescue me. Marianne did not know I had been removed. She did not know the family history. She was asking everyone the same ordinary questions. But those questions placed ownership where it belonged. Celeste owned her call. Owen owned his question. Ruth owned her assumption and her correction. Darren owned his summary. I owned the information I had passed and the name I had refused to borrow. The final simulated update arrived at 9:38. It was deliberately abstract. One fictional option was no longer available, and participants were asked to confirm how the change reached their assigned partners. There were no real routes, shelters, supplies, or emergency instructions in Harbor Light. It was a staged communication problem inside an invented county. Darren sent the update to Ruth. Ruth sent it to Celeste. Celeste called Owen, who had received a slightly different version, and called the exercise desk for clarification. Owen then called Ruth, not Darren, and explained what he had confirmed. By 9:47, every adult in our family group could say what they knew and how they knew it. Darren could not. He had designed a chart that showed every line, but he had not participated in most of the conversations. At 9:51, he sent me a private message. "Give me a summary before the debrief." I began typing one automatically. Celeste received this. Owen confirmed that. Ruth changed her assumption after speaking with... Then I stopped. A summary was not inherently dishonest. At the hotel, a good summary prevented the morning manager from drowning in detail. But Darren was not asking so he could understand the adults' choices. He was asking for a version he could stand above. I wrote, "Ask each participant for their own account." He replied, "I don't have time for 9 calls." There were 40 minutes left in the exercise. "Then you don't have time to claim 9 people's work," I wrote. He did not answer. The exercise ended at 10. At 10:03, Marianne sent the debrief invitation. It was scheduled for 4 that afternoon in the Civic Readiness Circle's meeting room. Darren had expected to attend on behalf of the family. The invitation named every participant. He called me from the parking lot at 3:35. "Can we talk before you go in?" He was standing beside his car when I arrived. Without the phone between us, he looked tired rather than powerful. His collar sat crooked. For a moment I saw the boy who used to wait behind the hotel desk on snow days, drawing rooms on scrap paper while I finished my handover. "I need tonight to go well," he said. "The exercise is over. You know what I mean." I did. 6 months earlier, Darren had been passed over for a supervisory job. He had told the family it did not matter, but afterward he began collecting visible responsibilities. He chaired meetings. He volunteered to introduce speakers. He attached his name to work that had once been shared casually. "The commendation would help," he said. "People at work notice these things. I wanted one thing they could point to and say I had led." Does the circle know the family system existed before you joined? It wasn't a system then, it was notes. You called it clean, because I saw what it could become. With you in the middle. He rubbed his forehead. "If you turn this into a family accusation, nobody wins." "I'm going to answer what I'm asked." "You always do this." "Do what?" "Make one exact sentence sound heavier than everything around it." I almost apologized. Precision had embarrassed him before. It embarrassed many people who preferred the comfort of a blurred account. Then I remembered his request that morning. Pass every message. Carry every risk. Use his name. Mention no missing link. "I will not accuse you of anything you did not do," I said. "I will not protect you from what you did." He went inside ahead of me. The meeting room held 30 folding chairs. A long paper sign said Harbor Light Participant Debrief, Fictional Exercise. The words "fictional exercise" appeared again on the screen at the front. Marianne welcomed us and repeated that we were discussing a simulation, not a real event. She asked people to speak only about the messages they had received and the choices they had personally made. Darren volunteered first. He stood beside the screen and displayed his call tree. The blue center box looked even larger projected on the wall. "The family group operated through a central coordinator," he said. "There were a few deviations, but the structure held." Marianne looked down at her notes. "Celeste, who gave you the West Side update?" Aunt Nora forwarded the 2 conflicting messages first. Then I confirmed mine with the exercise desk. "Whom did you contact?" "Owen and Ruth." "Through Darren?" "No." Owen spoke next. "I asked Darren what he thought I had received. He described Celeste's message. That's when I knew the center didn't have the whole picture." He did not say it cruelly. He said it the way a man describes discovering that a key does not fit. Ruth leaned toward the table microphone. I followed Darren's chart at first. Then I realized I was treating latest as replacement without checking. Celeste asked me to read my page. I changed my choice after that. Marianne asked, "Did anyone instruct you to do that?" "No, Nora told us to confirm directly." Celeste asked the question. 3 other adult relatives described similar calls. One had contacted Ruth because they worked the same shift and knew she would answer. Another had called Owen because his message concerned the fictional change they were both tracking. None of those lines appeared on Darren's chart. All of them worked because the adults knew one another. My cousin Denise, who had said almost nothing all morning, lifted her hand. "I want to correct my note," she said. "I wrote that Darren confirmed my message. He didn't. Ruth did. Darren told me the family response was complete, and I assumed that meant he had spoken to her." Marianne asked, "What made you check?" "Ruth called me after Celeste called her." "Was that call assigned on the chart?" "No, she knew I was waiting." Another participant, my brother-in-law Paul, spoke from the back row. "I followed Darren's instruction at first because his box was in the middle. When nobody answered, I called Owen. He didn't make my decision. He told me what he had and asked what I had. That was more useful." Darren turned from one speaker to the next. I could see him searching for disloyalty because that would have been easier to fight. But nobody was declaring allegiance to me. They were describing actions. That distinction kept the debrief from becoming a trial. We were not voting on which family member was best. We were discovering that the clean diagram had hidden the very choices that made it function. Darren's shoulders tightened. "That flexibility was part of the design," he said. Celeste looked at the screen. "Then why did you tell us every reply had to come back through you?" He looked at me. I could see what he wanted. A small nod, one gracious sentence, the quiet repair I had performed all his life. Marianne asked, "Who developed the direct confirmation pattern?" I stood because my knees had begun to ache in the folding chair, not because I wanted a stage. "I adapted it from the way I handled hotel handovers," I said. "I made the first family page 8 months ago. Darren helped turn it into the exercise chart. He also removed the side links and removed my name." "Mom," Darren said. I kept my voice level. "This morning, I forwarded every simulated update I received. I refused to answer as Darren's alternate because I was not listed as his alternate, and because the adults receiving the messages were capable of confirming for themselves." Darren stepped closer to the table. "It's common sense," he said. "Nobody owns common sense." "I don't need to own it," I said, "but you cannot claim you were the only one practicing it." Celeste raised her hand before Marianne could speak. "I don't want the record to say I was one of Darren's branches. I made my own calls." Owen said, "Same." Ruth looked at my son with sadness, not triumph. "So did I." That was the moment Darren lost the center box. No official reached down and took it from him. No secret document appeared. The adults whose names he had arranged beneath his own stopped consenting to the arrangement. Marianne turned off the projected chart. "The community thread commendation was scheduled to be presented tonight," she said. "It is non-monetary and has not yet been conferred. Based on what we have heard, the stated individual attribution is incomplete. The circle will pause that presentation." Darren laughed once, sharply. "So one messy exercise cancels everything?" "No," Marianne said. "The exercise showed substantial contribution from several participants. We can recognize the network accurately, or we can postpone recognition. We cannot present a sole author commendation when the participant account does not support it." He turned to me. "Are you satisfied?" I wished he had asked whether I was hurt. I wished he had asked why he found it easier to erase me than to stand beside me. Satisfaction was a smaller word and safer for him. "I'm finished speaking for today," I said. The circle redirected the commendation to the adult participant network. There was no public punishment, no hearing, and no announcement about Darren's character. He kept his job and his place in the family. He simply did not receive credit that depended on everyone else remaining quiet. Marianne asked whether the participant network wanted a group photograph for the Circle newsletter. Darren looked toward the door. Celeste said she did not want a photograph that afternoon. Could the note just say the recognition belongs to the adult participants? She asked. Owen agreed. Ruth did too. I felt an unexpected relief. A photograph would have created another center, even if I stood in it. It would have invited people to study our faces for a winner and a loser. The plain written correction was enough. Marianne changed the draft announcement while we watched. She removed Darren's name from the sole credit line and replaced it with the Harbor Light Adult Participant Network. She did not add mine alone. That mattered. I wanted my work named truthfully, but I did not want to inherit the throne I had objected to. In the hallway, Celeste opened the contact page on her phone. Owen, what number do you actually answer after 6? He told her. Ruth gave both of them her work number and said, Don't make Nora carry messages between us anymore. I said, You can still call me. We know, Ruth said. That's different. Darren left before we finished. For the first week after the debrief, the change felt less like freedom than absence. My phone was quieter. I learned how much of my day had been shaped by other adults asking me to translate one another. On Tuesday, Ruth called and said, Tell Celeste I can come by Thursday. Then she stopped herself. No, I'll tell her. She hung up, called Celeste, and phoned me back 10 minutes later to talk about the mystery novel she was reading. Owen began confirming plans with Celeste before calling me. Celeste made a small direct contact list that had no center and no title. Nobody presented it to a civic group. Nobody attached a name. They still made mistakes. Ruth forgot to answer once. Owen assumed Celeste had heard something she had not. The difference was that they corrected the person involved instead of sending the problem to me or Darren. The quiet exposed some relationships that had existed mostly through me. Denise discovered she and Ruth had very little to say to each other when there was no task between them. They did not manufacture closeness. They exchanged the information they needed and ended the call politely. Celeste and Owen discovered the opposite. They began talking after their confirmations were finished. Owen asked about a delayed warehouse shipment. Celeste asked whether his new flooring helper was settling in. Their contact became ordinary enough that neither reported it to me. Ruth struggled most. Twice she left me long messages intended for someone else. The second time I called back. Do you want me to listen as your sister or deliver this as your messenger? She said, as my sister. So I listened. When she finished, I asked what she planned to tell Celeste. Ruth groaned, but she called her. Direct contact did not make every relationship warm. It made each relationship honest about what it was. 3 weeks after Harbor Light, I saw a notice at the County Arts Center for overnight volunteers. It was not an emergency service. The job was to answer a quiet line for adult artists using rehearsal rooms after regular hours, record ordinary building requests, and pass notes to the morning staff. 1 shift a week, 10 at night until 2. I applied. The first Thursday I sat beneath a yellow desk lamp while a cellist called to say a music stand was missing, and a painter asked whether a delivery had been logged. I wrote down what had happened, what had not happened, who already knew and who still needed an answer. The work felt familiar without making me responsible for anyone's family. 6 weeks after the debrief, Darren sent me a message. I should not have removed your name or called the design mine. I was ashamed about work and wanted something that looked like leadership. I know that doesn't repair it. It was the first message from him that named an action without asking me to soften it. I did not answer that night. I did not forward it to Ruth or ask Celeste what it meant. Darren and I had spent years using other relatives as cushions between difficult words. If we ever spoke about Harbor Light again, the conversation would belong to the two adults in it. 8 weeks after the debrief, Celeste called while I was getting ready for my arts center shift. "Aunt Nora, can you tell Owen I got the new warehouse schedule?" She stopped. "Never mind, I'm calling him now." 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. "Did he answer?" I asked. "He did. We handled it." "Good." There was a small pause. "I didn't call back because I needed anything," she said. "I just wanted to hear your voice before you went to work." So we talked. Not through anyone, not for anyone, just directly.